You don't just say, hey, I'm going to take a while off and maybe I'll be back, maybe I won't. You owe it to the fans, you owe it to that belt to give him that opportunity to fight again, unless you're going to retire.
Who is to blame for these failures?
Jon Jones is a master manipulator.
Yes, they are doing a disservice by not making it happen, and they should. There just aren't a lot of like crazy heavyweight fights anymore.
Heavyweight division is a disaster right now.
Welcome back to Against the Cage. My name is Jake Arrier. I'm joined by my esteemed co-hosts, Mr. Scott Fontana and Eric Richter. And guys, the big news of this week that the conversation has really been swarming around is Jon Jones and his Twitter storm, mainly circling around whether or not he's going to be coming back and going into his much anticipated fight with Tom Aspinall. I'll read you some of these tweets that everybody seems to be talking about. One person saying, enjoying your last days as champ before being stripped. This is sort of the first of the Twitter storm. John saying, stripped? Do I come across as the type of person who cares about things like that? People continuously responding, saying, listen, you need to vacate. He says, y'all barking up the wrong tree. I told the UFC my plans a long time ago, and I have no clue why they haven't shared them with you guys yet. Lastly, one person saying, how does it feel to be retired? He says, I don't know if I want to call it retired. He says a few things after that, but I feel like those are the biggest things, and there's a lot to go off of this. So let me ask you guys, does Jon Jones, from what just these things we've seen here and in the past, does he seem like he's interested in fighting this year? Scott, I will start with you.
He doesn't seem particularly there's no fire under him to make sure that he fights this year. I feel like he could wait this out as long as he feels like. But the funny thing is, like, this whole will he fight Tom Aspinall thing kind of was born in part because he had another fight in mind. It was Alex Pereira, and that was when Alex Pereira held the belt that John used to hold, and there was all the the ideas of Pereira going up to 265, maybe fighting against John, that John put into the world when he spoke to us and some other outlets. That fight doesn't have any intrigue anymore because Pereira lost. He lost the belt. Something's got to change there at the very least to make that happen. So it just doesn't seem like he wants to fight at all, really.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, so when we talked about that fight, I disagreed with the idea of Pereira fighting Ankalaev in the beginning. Now Ankalaev wins, and I think that we would have seen Jon Jones fight Alex Pereira. I think that's a good call out, Scott. Does he look like he's interested to fight? Not particularly. He looks like he's on vacation right now, and he's having drinks, and, more power to him. He's got enough money, it seems like. I can't tell if this is a negotiation or not. I think that the UFC is willing to pony up whatever dough he's looking for. At one point, he was offered 20 mil. He said he wanted, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury money for a fight. He said he would want like in the 20 million range. I cannot imagine that the UFC is being cheap with him. Unless, Scott, it looks like
I can't imagine they're going to give him 20 million. No, they're never going to do that. They don't care enough about that. I think they're more willing to let the fight go than they're willing to raise the bar for how much money they're going to give a fight. Realistically, they could have done this before. They could have made the Francis Ngannou fight because that was even more in demand than against Tom Aspinall. Sometimes we forget about it because we're in the moment, but that fight was even bigger. It really was. It commanded happening, and they couldn't make that happen. So I have to think that there is a distinct limit in what the UFC is willing to do, and it's probably not meeting what John wants to do. And is it 20 million? I have no idea. I really don't. But I have to think that, number one, this is in large part a big negotiation on John's part to try and get as much as he possibly can. And until then, he doesn't seem interested in fighting. It doesn't mean he's done fighting, but I think he's okay if he is done fighting.
Oh, I can't imagine that they wouldn't. Conor McGregor was making huge money to fight. I mean, even in terms of just disclosed purses, he was making big money. Even for like the Cowboy Cerrone fight, which wasn't the biggest fight, didn't do Khabib Nurmagomedov numbers. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, I think even still in the piracy climate that we live in today, where pay-per-views are no longer really a top priority for the promotion, the UFC should be willing to pay him well over $10 million, $15 million. And it doesn't even have to be guaranteed, but including pay-per-view sales, Jon Jones should be offered. And if not, the UFC has done everyone a disservice here for the last several years if they are
Well, you're
not
hitting
willing
on
to.
it though. You're hitting on that though, Eric, because yes, they are doing a disservice by not making it happen, and they should absolutely pay to make this fight happen because it would help their brand. It would bring in a lot of eyeballs. It could bring that stuff in. But I don't think it's that much of a priority for them. I don't think they care enough. There are way too many stakeholders, and there's just too much focus on that side of it that I don't think it's that much of a priority. I don't.
Can I do want to pose one question for you, Scott, though. Uh, do you think that if that number was met, the one that John proposed, that in the UFC,
Whatever that may be,
say it's,
yeah.
let's just say it's 20 million, right? The UFC says, fine, we'll give you 20 million. Do you think John says yes? Or, as some people have speculated, do you think he's setting, or like Dana had speculated with the Jones-Ngannou fight, he's proposing a ridiculous number that, he knows that the UFC can't meet. Would he say yes if they did give him that number?
I mean, I don't know that 20 million should be ridiculous, but it is probably ridiculous based on the way they've tended to pay everyone, save for Conor McGregor. To your actual question here, I do think that if they get a number that he threw out there, he probably would take it because realistically, he knows he's near the end. Getting 20 million is a lot better than not getting 20 million if you're a prize fighter. So I don't see why he would turn it down.
Okay, fair enough. Because it seems not so far-fetched that he's made his decision. This is speculative, of course, but like he's made his decision to retire and saving face by saying they're not giving me the money that I asked for, but just throwing out crazy numbers. And
But if he's retiring, then why not just give up the belt? Like
that's the question.
Because why would he worry about it? I feel like this absolutely is a bargaining chip. That 100% is a bargaining chip. He holds that, and people view him as the champion, even if they have another one. And it's a fight they want. And the state of the UFC's heavyweight division isn't all that cracked up to be. Maybe we'll get to that a little later, but this is the fight. They want this fight, but on their terms.
I'm gonna take a quick detour because we have a lot of thoughts about this, and we will continue to give our thoughts about this, but I do want to throw in, we did talk to, or Scott, you talked to Mr. Daniel Cormier, who fought John Jones twice, was the former heavyweight champion, and this is what he had to say about the holdup at heavyweight.
Right, I think so many people forget who John Jones has fought, who he's been in the octagon with, and all the challenges he's overcome. With that being said, I believe this is a very dangerous fight for him. And I think he recognizes that because the guy's big, the guy's strong, and the guy's young. And that is the difference today opposed to what Jones dealt with prior. When I fought Jones the first time, I was 36 years old. When we fought the second time, I was 38, about to go 39 years old. Like, we were up in age. How old were you when you fought Jones?
Yeah, 30, 38.
Yeah, we were old. He was a young guy, 27.
Yep.
Now it's like he's on the opposite end of that. And, like, there's some worry when you look in the mirror and look at a 38-year-old man opposed to that 27-year-old kid that he was before, and recognize that Tom Aspinall is dangerous.
So you heard it from DC's mouth himself. Young, dangerous fighter. Do you guys think that is a factor in this, Eric?
It's a factor because Aspinall doesn't have a lot of ring time, so I see kind of what Cormier's getting at. John Jones loves watching film and breaking down like minute by minute, move by move, tendency by tendency, exactly what his opponents do. He does this in almost every fight, maybe sans over in St. Peru. So for me, I think that it's more, he maybe wants to get a little bit more computing time on Aspinall. Maybe he wants to see him fight a couple more times just to see if he can get a little bit more of an edge and you take some time off. I mean, he could just sit on the beach. It seems like he, has said that he's more into his family life and becoming a good dad, I believe is what he said. So he's trying to get to that point. So I think it's more about computing time than it is about old age. I think maybe he'd take this fight like next year if Aspinall fights like two or three times in that span.
Great. Yeah. So actually, the question that I was going to ask, but I missed out on it before, is there more to this? And I think you touched on that right there. So something that I first off, I definitely agree with you. John is 100% the type of person who tries to gain any advantage that he possibly can. Tape study is one of the things that we've heard him talk about a lot. Something that
Sometimes substances.
yeah, sometimes that's a whole other rabbit hole. But one thing that also you could point to is like that people were raging about back in the day is the oblique kick, and he's like, it's not illegal, I'm gonna do it, right? One thing that Anthony Smith said recently is that John Jones is a master manipulator. At least that's coming from the words of Anthony Smith. But I don't think that that's a far-fetched claim at all. The guy is great at mind games. During the Stipe fight, he got Stipe riled. There was no beef there, right? He kind of created the beef on it himself. Don't talk about my family like that. Is this all a way to sort of suck the life out of Tom Aspinall, get him frustrated, and that kind of stuff? What do you think about that, Scott?
I don't know how frustrated he is with not getting the John fight. I think he is more frustrated with not getting the undisputed fight. When we had Tom Aspinall in our studio back in November around fight week when John did face Stipe, he had this to say. He said, on the contrary to what people think, it's not the John fight specifically that I'm after. What I'm after is the undisputed title. It's irrelevant to me who holds that. It's me. I want to hold that. John can do whatever he wants, just give up the belt, if that's the case, preferring at this point in time to fight Alex Pereira. That was what his case was here. I can see how maybe that couldn't be messing with him. I don't know if I put John at like master manipulator kind of level. I think he's more, when you reference the whole thing with my family, he's looking for motivation. I think those are two different things. He's trying to create some extra motivation where there really was not a ton of motivation to fight Stipe Miocic other than this broad legacy thing. And how much does he really care about legacy? I don't know, because he's holding on to this belt that he's not fighting, and that's not helping his legacy. So I don't know. You never really know with him, but I feel like manipulation isn't necessarily a thing here, but you never know. It could be needling Tom that he's not getting the chance to get that undisputed title, but also it's not engendering himself to us as observers and fans and everything.
Anything to add to that, Eric?
No, I think that's about right. I don't know where John goes from here. It seems like he's just gonna sit a year. That's what it seems like.
He's done that before.
Stringing us along, and
Sometimes court induced.
We're all wondering probably what Dana is thinking about the situation, but in case you are, Kaposa, the chronicler of MMA, the encyclopedia of knowledge that he is, he dug up a clip of Dana White talking about a similar situation that happened a few years ago.
I mean, did he say he wants to retire? He didn't say, I'm going to retire, I'm hanging it up, it's been great, everybody. Thanks a lot for all the years, see you later. He said, I'm going to take some time off, and I'm going to... First of all, that decision that happens, right? You don't just say, hey, I'm going to take a while off, and maybe I'll be back, maybe I won't. You owe it to the fans, you owe it to that belt, you owe it to this company, and you owe it to Johnny Hendricks to give him that opportunity to fight again. Unless you're going to retire.
Do you guys think that this is a double standard that's going on? Scott, I'll start with you.
It definitely is a double standard, but I mean, let's preface it by saying that this was UFC 167. We're going to UFC 316. This has been almost 12 years have passed. And the Dana White of 12 years ago is not the Dana White of today. So if you want to at least play that card, I will allow for the fact that, yeah, maybe there is a different thinking. There's different ownership. There's different lots of things, right? But yes, I mean, absolutely is a double standard. He was extremely frustrated when GSP was saying very similar things as he essentially retired for a few years in the cage after this fight against Johnny Hendricks, which didn't quite, it was questionable as far as the decision goes. Hotly debated for sure. More than a decade later. We'll talk about that another day. But the fact here is this: there was no fight that he needed to make with GSP near here that he kind of needs to. There was a lot more stars back then. Here we've got not many more. This is really just John as an active star anymore. Pereira lost some shine. I still don't know what Ilia Topuria is in this country. Globally, he's obviously got a very large following, but I don't know where that sits yet. So they want John to fight, I would imagine. So they're gonna play out. They're gonna game this out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that you just said it, Scott. I totally agree with you. I think that this is just negotiation. This is John, and Dana has had an interesting relationship with John over the past few years, especially the PED tests, the arrests. Dana has
Sitting
come
out for
after
3 years as a heavyweight, or
Yeah.
to move it to heavyweight.
sitting out for 3 years, right? And Dana has come at John in some spots. When Francis Ngannou knocked out Rosenstruck, he was like, they were talking about the Ngannou Jones fight. He's like, do you think John wants this fight? Of course he doesn't. And that's a forgotten clip now that Dana and Ngannou can't get along. But that is something that Dana said. So Dana has come at John in spots, and I don't think that he's afraid to do so. As it sits right now, I think it's just negotiation. I think he's holding that chip close to the chest before he bails on John Jones.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, listen, you just mentioned for the Francis Ngannou John Jones fight, that's a fight that failed to come through. Praying to God this one doesn't fail to fall through, but if it does, a question that I have for you, Eric, I'll throw it back to you: is why is the UFC struggling to make these fights at heavyweight?
UFC's been having a hard time at heavyweight for a long time, and we can go back to the Ngannou fight. I can also go back to Daniel Cormier versus Brock Lesnar. That would have been a fun fight. It would have sold a ton of pay-per-views, and they also failed to make that fight. It seems like the UFC, and Scott, you had said their unwillingness to pay a certain amount of their revenue to fighters' salaries. I don't know how much lower they could possibly want it. Even a slight increase would do massive
Well,
multipliers in terms of views, social media, all of that. The UFC hasn't had, like, they had the UFC 300 card, which was awesome and definitely, I don't want to say dominated the sports world, but definitely carved out a big piece of it.
pull some
And
eyeballs in, yeah.
oh yeah, brought some eyeballs in, and they haven't really followed that up with much since. So for me, I'm looking at it like the lack of investment is super short-sighted. If they are unable to continue making these fights, division is a disaster right now. It is terrible. And John Jones versus Francis Ngannou would have been a top 10 biggest fight in the UFC in the history of the UFC. It still would. And then now John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. If they fail to make that fight on top of it, I think we have to ask a lot of questions about who is in control of the UFC, how much time is being donated to making the right fights, and who is to blame for these failures, because they will have become drastic if they fail to make this Aspinall Jones fight. It would be a disaster for the promotion. And there's very limited accountability or no accountability at the executive level in fighting in general and boxing included. So I'd be interested to see, like, who's to blame for all of these mistakes, or is it simply just unwillingness to pay, or is it the fighters' fault? You could blame the fighters, I guess, but that's where I'm at on it. It's been a colossal failure of the UFC to not make fights at the heavyweight that people want to see.
Listen, let me just to kind of piggyback on that. You talk about the mistakes the UFC has made with their heavyweight division here. I think that one of the biggest ones is the fact that they have completely failed to create viable alternatives, alternative challengers here. We have John, we have Tom. There's no one clamoring for anything else. When you go back to that GSP situation, this was the welterweight division of the UFC, especially during GSP's era. There were contenders up the wazoo. I mean, we had Robbie Lawler was coming up. You had Johnny Hendricks. You had all of
More,
these names. Carlos
Rory.
Condit. This was like a great period of time for welterweight. Right now, we don't have a lot. Like if you look at just take Fight Matrix, for example, because they'll pull in from other promotions. UFC only has 7 out of the 10 top heavyweights and 10 of the top 15 and 11 of the top 25. That is
Ooh,
by far the lowest percentage of especially the latter, but even that middle figure, 10 out of top 15. It's the lowest of any of their weight classes, the men's weight classes that they share across other promotions. This is a weight class that does not have a giant grip on the talent at heavyweight. They've also let a couple people go. They just let Alexander Romanov go. They were willing to walk away from Jairzinho Rosenstrike, albeit someone who was 5-6 in his last 11 for the promotion, but this was still someone who considered the top 13. And that is another point. The fact that, frankly, there just isn't a whole lot of extremely good heavyweight talent in mixed martial arts abroad. We don't have a lot of options.
I remember talking to you guys about this a little bit before. I can't think of a significant matchup, consequential matchup that's happened at heavyweight outside of an interim title defense, or of course, the fight that happened back in November.
Jake, let me throw you something real quick though,
Yeah,
because out with the 10 top names in that, top 25 or so, and on Fight Matrix, like I said, they have had a collective 13 fights since the start of last year. So we're talking a year and a half. 13. That's it. And
yeah.
4 of them were involving Marcin Tybura, who frankly is at the very end of that. We're only
That's
talking about
great.
maybe 9 fights of any meaning for the division. Nothing's happening.
Let's just dissolve the division then. What are we doing?
Well, one more question that
That
I
won't
do have,
happen.
and also thank you for those stats, Scott, because it's nice to put numbers to these ideas. As far as the heavyweight division, if they can't make this fight, what's next? What does it mean for the division?
If they can't make this fight, frankly, they're really very limited options. We already have, it would be Tom Aspinall, right? Essentially, Tom Aspinall will be the one who move forward as the undisputed champion. But he's already got 5 wins over those top 10 fighters that I was talking about here. He is also one of them. So there's 6 out of 10 already know kind of what's going to happen. It only leaves Cyril Gane, Jaltin Almeida, and Derek Lewis, and I think I'm missing. Oh, John Jones, obviously, but that's obviously that's off the table too. So there's really only 3 fights here, unless we are going to try and fast track Taliesin Teixeira if he gets a win over Derek Lewis. Frankly, we just don't have a whole lot there. Is there enough juice for Tom Aspinall against Cyril Gane? I guess there's more than anything else, but that's kind of it. We're slim pickings.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. I think maybe the Jaltin Almeida. Dude, if he just didn't get finished in that Curtis Blades fight, it'd be like clear person to go.
That was bad matchmaking.
MMA math,
I thought that was bad matchmaking on the Jalton Almeida fight. I was at that fight. I thought that was just bad matchmaking.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was bad matchmaking. One thing that I was thinking is like maybe a couple 205 contenders that haven't panned out move up to heavyweight. Like Jan Blachowicz might be a little bit, crazy to move, but like maybe like an Olberg or a Rakic coming off of, he's had a couple of losses here.
Huge. He walks around at like 250 when he.
That's what I'm saying. Like Rakic could be.
But he's on the other side of 40 now.
Yeah, he's definitely a little older. I just think there could be an opportunity here for maybe a 205er to jump up. There's just really nothing at heavyweight that is. I mean, that's why you see Ankalaev going like, maybe I'll just fight at heavyweight because like there's not a whole lot there. He could probably run through that division too.
Big Ankh gets bigger.
Yeah.
One thing that I do want to ask before we close this up, because Scott, we've known each other for a few years now, and I follow you on social media. If you guys don't follow Scott, as well as Eric, of course, but Scott, one thing that you tweeted this week is proposing a heavyweight change to make the fights 1 round, unless it's a 10-8, they could win the fight. It seems like you have a disdain for the heavyweight division, which confuses me because, the narrative goes that heavyweights should be the most entertaining division because, this should have the shortest fight time. There's more knockouts at heavyweight, right? I'm trying to rally you up as much as I possibly can. Give us your thoughts, Scott.
Listen, I'm just going to name for you a few of those consequential fights over the last year or so. And you tell me how many of them you just were like, yo, that was a good fight. We've got John Jones versus Miocic. Obviously, that was a little more interesting. Aspinall versus Curtis Blades the second time. Were you thrilled of that one? Was that riveting? I don't know. Cyril Gane, Alexander Volkov. Was this thrilling? How about Volkov versus Pavlovich? Anytime Pavlovich goes to decision, I don't think anyone's having a good time, but he did it twice in the last year. The other one was against Rosenstrike because they didn't cut after. Do you have any interest in the fights that they're putting together? These are the fights that are supposed to be interesting. And then forget those. Just throw them out the window. Think about all the other filler heavyweights we get. Do we have fights that are, oh my God, they're knockdown, drag out brawls? Or do we get sometimes there's a finish in 5 minutes and sometimes there's a bunch of leaning against the cage for 15
They're
minutes?
exhausted.
These guys tire out. They're so exhausted. There are some heavyweights that can put it together a little bit, but even those guys, it's more like a point fighting fest, and it's not that interesting. There just aren't a lot of like crazy heavyweight fights anymore. This isn't Kevin Randleman and Fedor Emelianenko like we watched for homework a few weeks back. There's just not. They're not having those kind of fights anymore. It's boring. So that's why, yes, absolutely. What we should do if we want to have fun with heavyweight, make it fun and encourage everybody to get what they want out of it. You shorten the fights to 5 minutes. And then if they get the finish, they get the win. If they don't, they get a draw, unless they get enough 10-8s that say, hey, yo, they put it on them. You know, that's a sign that's like, okay, at least we were trying here. And I think you'd immediately improve the product. This will never happen, but I want it very badly. And Fontana MMA is going to have it one day. I promise you. I just need the funding. Someone send me money.
Yeah, I'll throw a few bucks there. We'll start a GoFundMe.
I like it.
Okay.
Kickstarter.
I appreciate you elaborating on some of those comments. If you have any comments on Scott's Fight League, let us know down below. But one thing that I just want to wrap up, guys, yes or no? Let's start with Scott. Do we think that this fight happens? Yes or no? And off of that, what's the percentage chance? I guess the percentage will kind of answer it. What's the percent chance that you think that this fight happens?
That Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall?
Yes,
Like it ever happens, or this year?
That I would say it would probably have to happen this year if it does
both.
ever happen.
Do both.
I'm going to say I'm actually going to say 33% chance. I still think there's a real reasonable possibility that they're going to get this thing done and they're going to bring it over to Madison Square Garden once again. I could see that happening. They could even do it at the end of the year in December in Vegas, where they like to do it. John likes to fight in Vegas. He gets to keep more of his money that way.
I feel like 33%.
I'll put it at 33.
33% seems pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
Solid chance, though. Solid.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a chance.
I was going to go, like, for this year, I was going to go, like, 20%. It happens at all, I'm going to go 45.
Ooh, okay. I believe that if it's going to happen at all, it's going to be this year. The percent chance that it does happen this year, and for me, I guess, at all, I am going to go 60%. I'm a little bit more optimistic.
You are an optimist. I knew it. I'm waiting for this, and I'm like, he's gonna say like 2 out of 3. I bet you.
Yeah.
60%
So
close.
honestly, I have convinced myself. I'm coping that this is just Jon Jones playing mind games, and he's totally gonna do it, and he's just drawn this whole thing out for Tom because he wants to get sort of mental edge on him and get him frustrated. Keep him maybe content on the couch. Oh, I don't know if I have a fight signed. Maybe he'll drop some days in the gym, whatever, that kind of thing. So we'll see. I think he is gonna get the jump, and get us all surprised. So that's where my head's at. And honestly, encourage you guys in the comments to let us know what you think. Are you a little bit more optimistic like me? Are you thinking, hey, this fairy tale's not gonna happen? Too good to be true? Let us know down below.
You could be the optimist like Jake, the pessimist like Eric, or me, who's a little more in the middle, maybe realist, but probably leaning pessimistic in this case.
Fair enough. Yeah, please let us know in the comments below. But on a lighter note and a good piece of news, just wrapping up that Tom Aspinall situation, moving on to something else because we've been talking about that for months and weeks. Something new. Patchy Mix is now officially in the UFC. Of course, last week we told you guys that Patchy Mix had not extended his contract with PFL, very obviously going to the UFC, and now it's official. And he's going to be fighting in our neck of the woods. We'll be at that fight in Newark, June 7th, and he's taking on Mario Bautista after Chito Vera had to pull out. My question to you guys is, obviously, Patchy Mix, one of the biggest talents out of PFL. Some people would say that he's right now the best bantamweight in the world coming into the bantamweight division in the UFC. Where would you guys rank him now, and why? I'll start with you, Scott.
I actually would put him kind of like in those top 5 contender range. I put him that high. I think he's just behind O'Malley, Peter Yan, Umar Nurmagomedov, and Corey Sandhagen. You want to start debating at this point with Song Yadong and maybe Davison Figueiredo. I still put him ahead of Figueiredo as well. So I think he's absolutely that. He has done enough outside of the UFC to warrant fighting that type of competition. I understand they put him in on more late notice against someone who's a little bit lower, which is uncommon when they bring in kind of more high profile outside of the UFC talent. Usually they'll give him like that really hard test. It's like, all right, let's see what you got. They didn't quite do
Yeah.
that here. And I think that makes, not that Mario Bautista is any slouch, but it makes it a little bit of a softer landing and an easier way for him to make a good impression.
Yeah, rather than say Patricio Pitbull coming in right up against Yair Rodriguez, like that's
That
a,
was a tough one.
yes.
Man.
Eric, how about you? Where would you place Apache Mix?
Similar, definitely a similar spot. I think he's definitely ahead of Marlon Vera in the rankings, right? So I'd say that's the floor. He's going to be ranked six. I
The
like him
man you're
higher than
replacing, yeah.
I'd like him higher than Figueiredo. I mean, you could just look at the betting odds, right? Vera was a plus 260 underdog by the time that it closed before the fight was going to happen with Batista, right? He was a plus 260 underdog. You guys want to guess the odds on Mara Batista versus Patchy Nix here? Patchy
You go
Mix.
first, Jake.
I'm gonna say Patchy Mix is I'll say minus 200.
I'm
You
gonna
look
say minus 240.
okay. I don't believe you, Jake. You looked ahead of time. You
Wait,
already knew.
really? No
It's
way.
minus 200 on the dot.
Let's
Well done.
go. All right.
Yeah, yep, yep. That was yep. So he's minus 200 on the dot. So the
Jake is
floor
a
there, right,
notorious
is my
degenerate gambler, actually.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys knew
that's
that.
my side gig.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I would say, yeah. So he's definitely higher than Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera was plus 260 against Batista, and now Patchy Mix is minus 200. So I'd say he's probably ranked ahead of Song Yadong, number five. I'd say that's fine. You could rank him six if you'd like, but the floor here is seven. There's no way you could go lower than seven. If you're not familiar with Patchy Mix, he's 20-1, former Bellator fighter, didn't come over to the PFL once they bought him out. I'm sure that his contract was a little bit more than the PFL was willing to pay. But he's got great wins. Sergio Pettis, who the UFC should have never let go. Sergio Pettis, he defeated him by rear naked choke. That was a really fun fight. You watch that one if you want to look at some of what he's done in the past. But super talented fighter, mostly gets finishes, and yeah, I'm really excited for him to fight Mario Bautista. I'm not so sure if I'm going to bet him or not. I'd say that minus 200 seemed a little bit.
We got a little time. You can think about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna think about it a little bit longer, but minus 200 seemed a little rich. I actually kind of like Mario Bautista, even though everybody makes fun of Mario Bautista for how he beat Aldo, which was nonsense. I think everybody agrees. But yeah, I mean, it's a great signing for the UFC. Bantamweight just keeps getting better, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and one more thing to add about Patchy Mix too is like, yes, I'm putting him in about that five at the bottom of the top five, but that's not me saying that he might actually be the best bantamweight in the world. I don't know that I would favor him against Murad Dvalishvili, who is friends. They're friends, by the way. So
that's
I
an
mean, that'll be an
important.
interesting
Yeah,
situation when we get to that point, or if we get to that point. But there's no reason for me to think he couldn't beat all those four men ranked ahead of where I'm saying he would slot in.
that's yeah. Those are all
I
very very good points.
I would line Mix versus Sandahagen as a pick'em. I would probably have Umar Nagomedov a favorite, and then I'd have him probably a pick'em against Jan as well. It'd be a very interesting. Those would be really really lined, really
About
really
O'Malley.
close.
That's a good fight.
That's a fight. That's a fun fight.
That
I'd
is
probably bet. I would bet Mix if he was plus money for sure. I would say Mix
Okay.
minus 140.
So it's interesting that we're talking about this. Obviously, Sean O'Malley is fighting for the title that same night, so that perfectly ties into this question. If Patchy does get past Mario Bautista, what's next for him? Does this mean a title shot? Does he get in the cage with the winner? What's going on? What's going on over here, Scott? I'll start with you.
No, there's no title shot next. No way. I'm not saying he wouldn't be a fantastic opponent. And frankly, if they dropped him in right away and skipped the line and said, okay, it's another world champion against someone else, I'm not sitting there and griping even in this amazing division that we have. But it is so crowded up there. I think he would need to defeat somebody with a little more cachet in the UFC first before they could give him that immediate shot. I mean, he goes out there and he looks like just a world beater and just smashes Mario Bautista. I don't know. You never know. It could change the calculus, but I still think it's just too crowded up there. He's got to have one more fight, but you got to jump him up there and make a really great fight. Like him versus Corey Sandhagen would even be a lot of fun. And realistically, if the winner got a title shot off of that, who's complaining?
Yeah, Eric, what do you think?
I think Corey Sandhagen would probably show up at Hunter Campbell's door if Patchy Mix got a title shot before he did. I think he'd go, especially after that performance against Davison Figueiredo, where he looked really good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that Patchy Mix probably, even if he wins this one, he's gonna have to get through Umar, and then the loser of Sandahagen versus Marab, and then O'Malley. Yeah, no, he's 2 fights away at least.
Yeah, there's a few permutations at bantamweight depending on who wins. I think in terms of the title shot picture, you could go things a little bit differently if Marab wins and Sean O'Malley wins. So a lot of stuff to be decided for bantamweight on June 7th.
In Newark, yeah.
In Newark, we'll be there. So yeah, it's and also at women's 135, it's a whole bantamweight fest going on over there. So if you like bantamweight, which I don't see how you could not, it's a very interesting night.
The best division in
I
combat.
hate little people. No.
Oh, we're gonna clip that. No. Alrighty. Moving.
Not little people. Small.
I thought you
weighted
hated
people.
heavyweights, man. What's going on? You got to get your story straight.
I love the bantamweights. The bantamweights are some of my favorites.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, he was playing facetious. Okay, so I think that's enough. Looking forward to June 7th. Extremely excited for that. Let's look back at this past weekend for what happened in the Apex, the warehouse, as we like to call it. Michael Morales KOs Gilbert Burns in round 1. Not a whole lot else to say. I mean, the guy looked absolutely massive, but my question to you, Scott, is has Michael Morales arrived in this incredibly crowded welterweight division?
He's definitely announced his presence to me. I think we're looking at someone who's, number one, he's massive. I mean, you saw the size difference between him and Gilbert Burns. Burns is, of course, an up-jumped lightweight, but he has fared very well. I mean, we saw him fare extremely well against Hamzat Chimaev, who is very much not a welterweight anymore.
Yeah.
We're talking about someone who might be closer to light heavyweight than even 85, who knows. But yeah, I think he's definitely arrived in the mix. You got to start giving him a real excellent fight here at this point. You don't know what they're going to end up having to do with Sean Brady, but Sean Brady versus Michael Morales would be pretty interesting. I don't know who doesn't like that fight. Eric's into it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm a huge Sean Brady stan. Like, in my heart, he's like the number one guy. Like, I'm the most interested in watching Sean Brady fight for a title. And this is something that Eric, you'd mentioned when it was just the two of us for a little while. Like, Sean Brady's mic work. I mean, I know that if we're living in a meritocracy, that has nothing to do with it, but we don't. We don't live in a meritocracy. It's a television show at this point, basically. I think he's got the absolutely terrifying grappling. He's got the mic work to back it up. I think it should be Brady versus Gary. It seems like that's the direction that they're going in, but what a time to be a welterweight and a welterweight fan. It's absolutely crazy up there. Anything?
There's a lot of ways to not get this wrong. They're kind of doing one, like by obviously having Islam Makhachev do it now. We talked about last week, the timing of that was kind of not ideal. I think this is part of the reason why. But then again, welterweight always has bodies. Like we said, 12 years ago, they had a ton of bodies. They still have a lot of bodies. Maybe it's just the way it is at welterweight and 170.
Yeah, and then Joaquin Buckley's going to fight Kamaru Usman. And if Joaquin comes out of that, I mean, there's just so many people who, like, in a vacuum should have a title shot,
I kind of want to redo the Joaquin Buckley, Ian Gary booking. That one.
Oh, that would have been good.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that division because it's like Bilal's obviously not going to get it. He'll probably never get another title shot. Even if he wins like 7 in a row, they're not going to give him one.
It's tough.
Can I just throw out here, this is a little, we never really talked about this, but just the fact that we have this glut at 170, I have always been a very big proponent of splitting up 170 into 165 and 175. You wouldn't have 3 divisions, you'd have 2. But if you do that, then you've got number one, the UFC has one more champion, which they say they hate having too many champions, but also they love putting championship fights on pay-per-view events. So why would you not have one more? And then you get double the opportunities to create some really excellent fights. I don't know. I don't see who loses. I want that.
I don't know. I'm thinking about
this is a greater discussion one day.
Yeah,
That would be fun.
I can't tell if I love the fact that there's so many people at 170 that like have a title claim, or if I absolutely hate it. I'll try and think about that over the next week. I'll let you guys know.
We don't need to get as spread out as heavyweight is, where we just trashed it, but like I feel like there's a middle ground here.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, to wrap up the night at the Apex on Saturday night, Eric, we do not have any bets to look forward to for this weekend. It's an off weekend, but we do have an opportunity to look at how we did on Saturday night. So how did we do?
Yeah, not too bad. Night at the office. We had a Rodolfo Bellato. That fight with Paul Craig ended up getting pulled due to herpes, allegedly.
As they
So
do.
Allegedly.
as they do, as they do.
I,
So that fight didn't end up happening. I had, fight starts round two, fight goes to decision there at long shot odds plus 450. Got some good CLV there as well. But that ends up being voided. Loved Gabe Green, man. I mean, he was plus 200. I thought that was obscene. It was obscene. His opponent, who is a UFC newcomer, does not grapple much at all. Even Gabe Green was able to submit him in the second round. Great performance. Had Julian Erosa. I love Julian Erosa. He fights for your money. At the end of the day, he will fight hard. He's never quitting. He took a ton of damage against Costa, and he was able to keep coming forward. Shout out Erosa. Don't hate the bet at all. And, that's a profitable night, and I'll take it. Back-to-back profitable weeks here in the betting world. So let's keep making money.
Heck yeah. There we go. Alrighty. So that wraps up Saturday night this past weekend. Some of the news items, agenda items, if you will, of this week. Eric, why don't I throw it back to you for quick hits?
Yeah, let's absolutely do it. Dana White, he was supposed to be doing the TKO boxing thing. We've been hearing about this for the better part of 5 years, maybe longer.
Much longer.
TKO box longer, probably like Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather fight once that happened, which is a long time ago now. So Dana White and TKO Boxing were coming together. They're going to promote this Crawford versus Canelo fight that was supposed to happen the day before Mexico Independence Day, and that has been put on hold now. The Ring announced in a press release. They own the Ring website, Turkey Al-Sheikh, I believe how you pronounce
Al
it.
Sheik.
Al-Sheikh.
Al Sheik.
Al-Sheikh. Turkey Al-Sheikh posted on the Ring basically that Dana White's no longer promoting it, and they have a new promoter coming in, and they moved the date as well from September 12th to September 13th. I'm sure that Dana's gonna, he's not gonna want to answer questions about it, but this is a really interesting set. This is really interesting to see how this will go forward. The UFC is now competing directly with this boxing event that Dana was previously involved in, and now who knows what happens. I still have questions about how much time Dana is devoting to the UFC. But second quick hit, Ryan Bader, former two-time Bellator champion, finally has parted ways with the PFL. They didn't want to pay him for a long time after he was, over at Bellator getting paid a ton of money, apparently, from everyone who I've talked to. And then, he's joined Ryzen. So likely be fighting here in the heavyweight tournament that they have coming up. So still
My
in progress.
understanding is he's going to be fighting the winner of their Grand Prix that's ongoing. He would probably fight that person likely on the New Year's Eve event that they do in Japan every year, which is now basically Ryzen's event.
So he's got a good bit of time.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, so then just to wrap up, quick hits, not great, but Pat Miletich, who is the first ever holder of the welterweight championship. He got his fourth drunk driving arrest this past week. Don't stop getting behind the wheel, I guess. But fourth DUI. He is now a 30-day jail sentence after he was convicted in Iowa for a DUI. So that's it on quick hits. Scott, what do you got for me on fight recommendations?
Well, let's revisit what we watched from last week, which is, of course, the first fight between Jim Miller and Joe Lozon. I want to know what you guys thought.
A lot of blood.
Bloody.
There's a little bit of blood, yeah.
I want to say, Scott, when we hung out with Jim Miller back in April of last year, I swear he was just talking about the canvas and like how much blood, and I that was the Joe Lozon fight, if I'm not mistaken, that he was talking about. It had to have been, right?
Blood. And what I didn't quite realize about the two of them when we were following around for that piece that we wrote, and shot as well, is the fact that they were friends. Like going into it, he considers him a friend, and so they just kind of got paired together. They were hanging out in the summer at they told some stories. But yeah, like then a few months later, it's like, well, let's just beat the crap out of each other and get paid for it. And they ended up fighting and making themselves what probably, I mean, realistically, this fight could end up in the UFC Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah. That definitely has Hall of Fame written on it. And it was interesting, just a couple notes that I had written down while watching. Joe Lozon, 30 seconds left in the second round. He lands on top, and then he hears coach scream, 30 seconds, Joe, 30 seconds. He jumps down for the heel hook. He ends up going to that again in the third round because he almost got it at the end of the second round. It was actually way close, but he ran out of time. End of the third round, same thing, nearly got it. Transitions to a Darce, nearly finishes it in the last 10 seconds of the third round. Super fun fight. Have you ever seen doctors come in and keeping Joe on top, keeping the fighter who is bleeding on top of the fighter and guard? I've never seen that before, but the doctors rushed in and they said, "Don't move, continue bleeding" on Jim Miller, which made no sense. UFC, I mean, it's not the UFC's fault. The commissions just do weird stuff sometimes, and it seems like there's kind of no rules. But that was my takeaway of this really, really fun fight.
I will say with these older fights, it seems like the doctors make decisions very differently than they do these days. I feel like these days when a doctor comes into the octagon, you're like, the fight's over. And with this
depends
one,
what state you're in. This was in Vegas, so if you're in New York, you worry. If you're in Vegas, it's fine.
Fair enough. No, but it was an amazing fight. I still don't know how Lozon got out of that first round. But moving on, what is our homework for this week? Considering we don't have any fights this weekend, we have a little bit of extra time.
You've got extra time, so you're getting extra fights. It's still not going to take up a crazy amount of your time, believe it or not. But we're going all the way back, and I mean all the way back. UFC 1. We're going to watch the whole thing.
Oh, boy. It's a big homework assignment. I mean, long weekend,
too. As real as it
gets. All the fights, what is it, 7 fights, yes?
I believe it's 7 fights, because it's a tournament. It was an 8-man tournament. You had the quarterfinals, you had the semifinals, and you had the final. I mean, this is the, not spoiling anything here, this is the rise of Royce Gracie and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to the grand stage of the world, and it started why we're all talking right here, right? The UFC.
Yes,
Yep.
This is a big part of the lore of everything.
7 fights, enjoy them.
Yes. Alrighty. Well, I haven't watched, honestly, I don't know if I've watched any of those fights from start to end. Obviously, I've seen a bunch of clips because it's referenced all the time and had to have seen, some of Royce doing his thing against the bigger guys. But yeah, very excited for that one. So we will all let you know what we think, and you guys let us know in the comments what you think about UFC 1. Even if you don't get to watch all the fights, get to watching some of them, very important stuff.
Or what you thought of Lozon and Miller, too.
Yes,
Throw
that as
in
well.
there.
Let us know what you thought about that one. And then, Scott, what is our This Week in MMA before we wrap up?
This week in MMA, we go back to May 23rd, 2015, 10-year anniversary just about of UFC 187. That was when Daniel Cormier ascended to the peak of the light heavyweight division, beat Anthony Rumble Johnson for that vacant UFC light heavyweight title. Why was it vacant? John Jones. John Jones would have faced Rumble Johnson, but he was stripped in the wake of his hit-and-run incident with the aforementioned pregnant woman.
Wow. There we go. What a way to tie a bow on this one. Let's hope that John Jones doesn't get stripped in the same manner that he did in that instance. But
definitely not that way. Let's keep everybody safe, everybody.
Yes.
Just if they're gonna take the belt away, let it be while he's sitting at the beach, sipping a Mai Tai.
If you see any Bentleys swerving around in Albuquerque, New Mexico, be wary. Alrighty. With that, I think we are all set. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode for all the more content about us interviewing fighters and bantering about MMA like you saw today. So enjoy the fights, enjoy the long weekend, watch UFC 1, and we will see you guys next week.